guys, so today we're going to do some Nacon settings. I see a lot of people are giving up on the controller before giving it a proper go. I too myself almost gave up on it. I think there's a lot to get used to, and with the controller offering sensitivity settings and games in-game settings as well, it gets a bit overwhelming at some stage. But yeah, I think it's an awesome controller. And once you get used to it, it does offer a lot of advantages over the standard DualShock. So first up, let's check the differences between the two controllers. The height difference between the analogs is definitely going to influence your overall aiming and movement in games. And you're definitely going to have to get used to the bit higher analogs, because you're going to have to push them a bit further to get the same output on the game itself. And then obviously the Xbox layout, if you have not ever played Xbox before, it's definitely something you have to get used to as well. A lot of players do prefer the Xbox layout. And then obviously your convex and concave analogs on the Nacon versus the standard DualShocks, flat with the rounded centered part. It's almost they're catering for both concepts, but it's quite inferior to any of them really. If you look at the left analog on the Nacon itself, the concave analog, it's meant to be dragged along because your thumb is reaching further up to the analog itself, and then the convex one on the right, which you will be pushing to aim in game. Right, then onto the response curve settings itself on the Nacon. You'll see the three settings there, which the sum total of will always be 100, because that is the stick travel settings. Your response curve is also broken up into three segments. It's ranging from 0 to 0.33 to 0.66 to 0.99. It becomes obvious when you play around with these settings that you're not adjusting the sensitivity itself, but you're merely adjusting the length of the travel versus the actual response or output on the controller. So increasing the first bar, for instance, will lengthen your time until it reaches the maximum output for your first segment on the response curve itself. Right, and then just above the response curve, you'll notice there's a little slider for low sensitivity and high sensitivity. I leave this at low. I believe this was a fix in one of the firmwares for certain games, which had a twitch when aiming sometimes. And I do feel the low sensitivity gives me a bit more accuracy there. When I've got it too high, I tend to over-aim a lot. I'm not sure exactly what it does do on the controller itself, but I know I play better with it on low. Obviously these Nacon settings will boil down to the games you play. I don't think there's a happy medium regarding that. I think you need to fine-tune these settings for every game you play. Luckily you've got the 4 profiles to do that. I'm going to give you my Battlefield settings, since this video is greatly surrounding Battlefield. I do play a lot of Battlefield, and I do feel that my aim is pretty solid at the moment. I've played around with the Nacon settings itself and the in-game sensitivities, which we'll discuss just now. I've got my first value on 30%, then I've got it to 40%, and then to 30%. This gives me a nice long linear travel in the center part of my analog, which I think is being used the most during first-person shooters. It gives you that last little burst of speed on the far point for tracking people, and then also quick rotation with a small 30% to the 0.33 ramp up. Right, then to the Battlefield 1 settings itself. Under controls, you'll find the soldier stick sensitivity, the vehicle stick sensitivity, and the soldier zoom sensitivity. It's important to take note that the zoom sensitivity on the soldier is a percentage of your soldier stick sensitivity. They work together, so the one influences the other one. And these settings are up to the individual to get to. The best way to get these is to change them multiple times per match. And then just take note if you're under aiming, over aiming, or just having general tracking problems, or maybe just rotation speed problems. Right, next up is the stick acceleration setting. What this is basically, it's the ramp function on your analog. When you press it to a certain point, there's a time it takes for the output on the controller to reach that level. It's not raw input to the console itself, but it's doing it software side in the game. And I will be honest, I was very skeptical when people switched this off completely. I saw some YouTube videos posted on it, and I must say, since switching this off, my game has improved a lot, and my aiming greatly improved. It took me about 3 days to get used to the setting, but overall I'm very happy when I switched this off, and I recommend doing so for any people out there. The rest of the settings I leave pretty standard. There is the ability to adjust the soldier zoom sensitivity for each scope level independently, but I'm not getting into that. It's too much of an hassle getting used to different rotation speeds at different zoom levels, so I leave those at standard 100% and then switch the uniform soldier aiming on. It makes it uniform throughout all the scope levels. And lastly, you've got your auto rotate, which is basically your auto snap on or auto aim. It's a sensitive subject to a lot of people, probably including myself. I play with it off. I know a lot of other people play with it off. I do realize that there's a lot of people that doesn't even know the setting exists and they play with it on. But you'll find in any competitions or tournaments, people generally have that switched off on the servers. It does sometimes influence your aiming badly as well, so it's pros and cons. It boils down to what type of player you are and what you find as enjoyment. So yeah, leave it on, leave it off, that's down to you. I hope the info in the video is useful to any new Nacon users. Don't give up on the controller too quickly, it's really awesome and it does really improve your game.